More straight talk with Trent on Girls Can Tell.
People love to say they're open-minded. They'll assure you they're willing to change. But if you've spent any time in the real world, you know people almost never change their minds. Your first thought might be, oh, this is going to be about politics. It's not. There are enough podcasts that already do that better than I ever could, and that's not what this podcast is about. This is about the hundreds of other things we have our minds made up on: relationships, education, religion, and even all the little dumb things that don't really matter. So, can people really change their minds? Or is that just something we tell ourselves to feel better, like we have a say in it? Let's run through the 10 reasons why the deck is stacked against your mind changing. 1. Your brain is wired against it. The fact is, your brain doesn't want you to change your mind because you're human. Confirmation bias refers to our tendency as humans to stick to our original beliefs and cognitive patterns. The feature of how your brain processes information, so it's not any kind of personality flaw. Your brain takes shortcuts. It has to. There's too much information coming to analyze everything from scratch every time, so it develops patterns, beliefs, and templates, and once those are in place, your brain actively looks for information that confirms what you already think, while dismissing or ignoring information that contradicts it. We all do it subconsciously. You don't see reality, you see a version of it filtered through beliefs you've already locked in. 2. Research shows people form opinions based on emotions like fear, contempt, and anger, rather than relying on facts. You think you've arrived at your beliefs through logic and reason. You didn't. You arrived at them through feeling, then found facts to justify those feelings after the fact. That's why facts alone rarely budge anyone on anything. When you ask someone to change their mind, you're not asking them to change their opinion. You're asking them to change who they are. People don't hold strong beliefs because they thought them through and heard both sides of the argument. They hold them because those beliefs are a large part of their identity. It's how they fit into their group and how they explain themselves to themselves, how they know which tribe or group they belong to. If you're a vegan, your stance on meat is proof you're compassionate. If you're a hunter, your views on animal rights prove you're practical. When someone challenges those beliefs, your brain doesn't hear, hey, here's some new information. Your brain hears, you don't belong here and your people are going to reject you. That's why people would rather die on a hill than admit the hill wasn't worth standing on. Changing your mind feels like social suicide. 3. Cognitive dissonance is the psychological discomfort we experience when we hold two or more conflicting beliefs, attitudes, or values simultaneously. Your brain hates contradiction. When you encounter information that conflicts with what you believe, it creates mental stress, and your brain will do almost anything to relieve that stress, except change the original belief. Instead, it'll dismiss the new information as fake or biased, attack the source of the information, find one small flaw in the argument and use it to dismiss the whole thing, rationalize why the contradiction doesn't actually matter, or double down on the original belief even harder, or in relationships, twist the facts entirely to fit their narrative. You see this constantly. Someone's partner is clearly cheating, everyone around them can see it, but the person in the relationship will find explanations, excuses, reasons why all the evidence doesn't mean what it obviously means. Because admitting they were wrong means admitting they potentially wasted years, admitting they were an idiot, or that their judgment is flawed, that it's just too painful, so they don't. 4. The longer someone's held a belief, the harder it is to change. They can't see the belief makes no sense because of how much time they've already invested in it. They argue about it at Thanksgiving dinner, defend it online. They've ended friendships over it, built a reputation on it, and structured their entire worldview around it. Changing your mind after that feels like looking back at all those arguments, burned bridges, and wasted hours and thinking, I was wrong the whole time. That is unbearable. So they don't bear it. Instead, they double down, get more extreme, and dig in harder. 5. Facts don't change minds. Pain does. Here's something nobody wants to admit. New facts often don't change people's minds. You can present data, studies, expert opinions, logical arguments, and people will find a way to dismiss all of it. Because facts aren't what changed their minds in the first place, so facts won't change it back. What changes minds is pain, consequences, an experience too raw to just ignore. data doesn't even come into play. The alcoholic who finally gets it after the 8th DUI, the person who reconsiders their health choices after a heart attack, the guy who insists he's right in every relationship until he's divorced alone and wondering why nobody stayed. They only changed because reality beat them into submission. People who've spent years insisting they were fine, their habits were fine, their relationships were fine, until something catastrophic happened. Only then, when the cost became unbearable, did they finally admit what everyone around them had been saying for years. Information doesn't change people, but consequences do. 6. Relationships prove the point. If you've ever tried to change someone's mind in a relationship, you know how hopeless that feels. You can explain, you can beg, you can present evidence of patterns, behaviors, problems. They'll nod, agree, then promise to change. And then nothing changes. Because they don't actually believe they're wrong. They believe you're upset and they want you to stop being upset. So they say what you want to hear. They pacify you. But deep down, they still think they're right. Most breakups are just the slow realization that this person will never see it differently. You thought you could convince them. You thought if you just explained it the right way, they'll finally understand. And sometimes, this is the hard part, you're the one refusing to change. You're the one defending a position that's hurting the relationship, because admitting you were wrong feels worse than being miserable. 7. So, can minds really change? Yes, but it's rare, and it usually requires one of 3 things. First, humiliation or failure so big you can't ignore it. When the cost of being wrong becomes more painful than the cost of admitting you were wrong, people change, but not before. Second, evidence so overwhelming it breaks through denial. This almost never happens with arguments. It happens with personal experience. Someone who swore they'd never understand addiction changes their mind when their kid overdoses. Someone who's dismissed mental health issues changes their mind when they have a breakdown. Personal experience bypasses the logical defenses that your brain puts up. It's too immediate or too visceral to dismiss. Third, slow erosion over years. Sometimes beliefs don't flip, they fade. You don't wake up one day with a new opinion. You just notice 5 years later that you don't believe what you used to. It builds real flexibility. This is the healthiest kind of change, but it's also the rarest. It becomes genuine curiosity, humility, and the ability to sit with uncertainty instead of rushing to replace one certainty with another. 8. Here's what usually happens when people change their minds. They don't become more flexible. They move their rigidity somewhere else. The religious extremist who becomes an extreme atheist. The person who was certain about one thing becomes equally certain about the opposite thing. They just switched teams and kept the same mindset without questioning their beliefs. Real change, where you actually become more open and thoughtful, is almost non-existent. Most people are just collecting new certainties to replace the old ones. 9. So what should you do? If people can't change their minds, what's the point of arguing? What's the point of presenting facts, making cases, or trying to convince anyone of anything? Honestly, there almost isn't one. The smart move is learning who's open to change in the first place, instead of trying to convince people, and that's a very short list. Look for people who question instead of making statements, say I don't know without defensiveness, change their minds about small things easily, admit they're wrong without making it a big deal. Don't treat every disagreement like a threat. Now, those people you can have an actual conversation with. Anyone else, you're just wasting your time. 10. Finally, the hardest question. Can you change your mind? Not other people. You. When's the last time you genuinely changed your position on something important? Not just softened it or refined it, but actually reversed it. If you can't remember, you're part of the problem too. We all think we're the reasonable ones. We all think we're open-minded and it's everyone else who's stuck in their ways. But we're all running the same confirmation bias, the same cognitive dissonance, and the same desperate need to be right. The only difference between you and the people you think are close-minded, you agree with yourself. So, can people change their minds? Technically, yes. But practically, almost never. Your brain is wired to resist. Your identity depends on it, and the social cost of admitting you were wrong is usually too high. When people do change, it's because life beat them into it. Pain, humiliation, and consequences finally made the cost of staying wrong higher than the cost of admitting it. Except that most can't be convinced. So save your energy for the few who might. Hope that helped you. Take what's useful and leave the rest, and question everything. And question yourself.